So, what are we doing today? We're going to be looking at a virtual coaching app. I noticed an issue a while back. Actually, I've noticed it for years that people who want coaching either can't afford it, or there's some other barrier in the way, or they prefer to do things kind of on their own time. And I've always been trying to look for a solution to that, and the closest I got was kind of courses and content. The problem is that isn't quite a substitute for coaching because courses and content don't talk back to you. They don't listen to your questions. They don't find out the nuance of your situation and cater their content to what you're going through. And then ChatGPT came along, and a lot of people started using that for coaching and therapy, but they found that for a start, it was too agreeable and that it often gave sort of cliched answers you get on any old blog post. And then sometimes it's actually quite factually incorrect and can even be really misleading. So it was close, but it still wasn't quite it. And then somebody got in touch with me and told me about this app where you program it with all your own material and it acts as a virtual coach. And so today we're going to have a look at what that looks like, this coaching app, virtual coaching app. We're going to look at it in real time. We're going to give it real questions, see how it responds, how it compares to working with a real coach. I'm going to give you a look at behind the scenes. You can see how it's programmed, what information is fed into it, and how it's designed. And also you can get a sense of how it's different to something like ChatGPT or using one of the other sort of more generic AI type apps. We're going to run some live tests. Got some questions. You guys live on the call can provide questions at any time. And I've also got some people send some stuff through that they want to see it tested. So we'll not only ask it some questions, but then we'll look at the answers. We'll have a bit of a discussion back and forth and see not only how helpful it is, but sort of how much like me it is. We'll look at some of the limitations and downsides to using it. I don't want anybody to get false ideas about what this thing does, what it's capable of and what it's not capable of. We're going to have a look at sort of what it's for and what it's definitely not for. And then because I want to test this thing out until the end of the year, I'm going to run a special offer, a heavily discounted offer on using it for people for the rest of this year. And then at the end of the year, I'll decide whether it's worth keeping. And if so, I'd put the price up to something more reasonable. I'll introduce it and then we'll get into it. So first of all, what is it? It's basically a virtual version of me. It's available anytime. It can speak any language fluently, even in the way I speak, but in different languages. And it's trained to tackle all the key issues that I focus on as a coach. So nice guy syndrome recovery, self-confidence building, integrity and core values, healthy dating, relationships, friendships, socializing, those kind of key areas more than anything else. So unlike other AI type apps, this one's based entirely on my own material. I've packed it full of transcripts from my podcasts, from my coaching sessions, from key videos, the kind of content that best represents me and what I stand for. And that's mostly what it bases its responses on. I mean, it obviously learns how to structure sentences and stuff from a more generic app, but you'll see, it's clearly based on my material. And that's kind of how it's different. It isn't collecting from all over the internet, it's just me. So if you don't like me, you're not going to like this app. It's also programmed to talk like I talk, use my kind of speech patterns, my vocabulary, also my personality in terms of sort of how direct I am and the kind of style I use in coaching. It's been told how I coach, the kind of process I follow in any given session, and it actually follows that process in a conversation as well. So it's not just going to answer your questions. It'll dig into what you're trying to figure out. It'll get you to define your problems clearly. It'll challenge your beliefs. At least that's what it's been programmed to do. We'll find out. And it's focused on the stuff that I focus on. So living with integrity, building true inner confidence, core values living. It's focused a lot on honesty and bravery. It's not going to help you try and get like materialistic outcomes through deception. It'll challenge you if you're trying to do that. It wants you to enhance your social life and your relationships, especially. It challenges your limiting beliefs, especially something like the not good enough story or any sort of negative beliefs that you have about yourself. And it'll also actually dig into your childhood conditioning and challenge that. And mostly it's programmed to enhance you living by your values. So it actually elicits your core values and your principles and tries to encourage you to live by that At least that's what's supposed to do. We'll see. And yeah, so the reason I was into it is because basically it's like having expert level confidence coaching available 24/7. You could be like out on a date and struggling and flick at a question with the conversation you're in. And it could respond in real time, which is something I've always wished I could do as a coach, but I just don't have that kind of availability. It can give quick and deep responses, and it never gets tired. It's never too busy playing with my daughter or anything. This thing has no life. And it solves really practical issues. It's not quite so vague as the other AI apps that I've looked at, and not so agreeable. It actually challenges you to take an action. Like every conversation I've seen it have, it ends with you having to take a very specific action, like homework, which I thought was pretty cool. It's like if you're searching through videos and podcasts trying to find an answer to a specific question, this is what that does is it takes all my content and uses that to answer specific questions, so you don't have to go hunting for that information. You don't have to find the right podcast or the right video or the right course. It'll dig from all of those and give you the exact answer you need right now. It has limitless patience and motivation, which I do not have. It never gives up on an issue until you're satisfied with the result. I really like that. It explores your specific circumstances, your goals, your beliefs, and tries to encourage you to keep going in that direction rather than telling you who you should be. And it's pretty cool that you can save all of your conversations too, and you can reopen them. So you could have ongoing conversations with it, like if you're doing long term goals, or you can start over anytime with a fresh conversation without having to mix them all together. So, who's it for? Basically, anybody who wants coaching but lacks the funds for one to one coaching. This is probably the best substitute I can find for that if you want a similar level of support. I'm also planning to use it for my coaching clients as a benefit on the side so that they can have like round the clock support from me, where they'd usually ask me, like, do you have a video about this? They don't have to do that anymore. They can just go talk to the app and it's almost like talking to me. It's for anybody who likes my content, but they want those really specific answers. They want to jump straight into solutions and solutions that apply to their personal situation specifically. I think it'd be good also for people who are interested in coaching, but they're not sure if it's valuable. Maybe they've never done it before, or they got some trust issues because the coaching industry is just so full of shit these days, which is fair enough. One person pointed out it's really good for introverts and deep thinkers who need time to respond. Sometimes my clients in the live sessions, they're aware that, there's kind of a time limit on the session to some extent, and they feel like they have to answer quickly and try and make the most of their time. But with an app like this, you can come in and out over days if you want to really formulate your answers. You can even tell it, like, I need to think about that. I'll come back to you. And it goes, okay, I'll wait for you. Like, look forward to hearing from you, sort of thing. And actually, one of the main reasons for this is I have quite a few people who are interested in my work, but they don't speak English as a first language. And so if someone wanted to talk to me, but in their own language fluently, this thing does pretty much every major language, as far as I can tell, even some of the more bizarre ones. That's enough intro yap about the app. Now I'm going to actually show you it. We're going to start by having a behind the scenes gaze at the thing, and then we'll take it from there. So you actually see what I see when I'm programming it. So basically, this is where I program it. I've told it like who I am, the basics about what I do, to give it a sense of, what I'm focused on: honesty, stoicism, science-based data. I've told it about my personality, at least what I think I am, I guess. Don't know how accurate that is, but that I'm, radically honest, I'm compassionate, but I also challenge them. I often use naive inquirer, and then I'm always looking for practical solutions. So I told it, like, I've got these kind of sliders where I can tell it where I am on these spectrums. My coaching styles are more coaching or advising, whether I'm more empathetic or straight talking. I often do long responses. I'm more informal than formal. I'm pretty challenging with a little bit of wiggle room. And I kind of mix it up between serious and chill. So it gets a sense of who I am. I've set it to do maximum value because I'm deciding I'm going to use this as like a tool. You can also use it as like a marketing thing to sell the coaching. Gave it some prompts about what I focus on. And then I gave it a big kind of instructions about how I do a session. I start by identifying the specific thing. I use Socratic questioning to articulate and define the problem. I challenge their problem thinking and their beliefs. I work through the limiting beliefs to move forward. And then help them break down whatever they need to do into manageable chunks so they can get into a new behavior. So I've told it to actually do that in a session. And then this bit here, basically, I've uploaded. I'm currently on the trial, so I've only got 30 pieces of content. So you can imagine it'll get more accurate when I start pumping it full of stuff. But a whole bunch of podcasts, videos, some coaching sessions. I've put it all in there and told it like that's who I am. And then I take it to this fine tuning thing here. So this is where I can actually test the thing out. I can type in questions or pretend to be a client basically, and then I can change the answers. So let's say I just tick one of these preset boxes, and then it gets me to like rate the answer. So I'll read through it, rate it. If I think it's a bit off, and I give it a lower rating, and then I go and edit it, I can make sure that it's, I'm tuning it to be what I think I would do. And I just keep doing this and making it more accurate. So that's the gist, basically. I won't show you any more because I don't want to reveal the secret conversations of the people using it so far. And now we will actually have a play with it. So I've got some questions prepared from some people, but you guys live on the call can send your questions through as well if you've got some stuff you want to see it try and handle. So it's a written app. So everything you just write into it. I don't think you can talk into it. Oh, you can. Huh, fuck, I didn't know that. So you can actually talk to the thing and give it instructions like that, or you can just type them in. But it doesn't talk back, it just writes back. All right, so this is what it looks like on the user side. It starts with a beautiful man, a little bit about me. And then this is basically what it looks like here. Basically, you just come and start typing in here. And yeah, it's got a little microphone app here, so it looks like you can say stuff. Let me just try that now. Hello, my name is Daniel. Oh yeah, that worked. So you can just put the answers in like that if you want. So let's say, hey Daniel, good to meet you, man. What brings you here today? What's the one thing you'd like to work on that would make the biggest difference in your life right now? It's exactly the kind of thing I'd say at the start of a conversation. As you can see here, I can actually rate the answer as well at any given time. So here's what I got sent through. You've set a boundary and enforced it consistently, but then you slip and let it slide. What's the right thing to do after that point? How do you recover integrity once you've broken your own boundary? Send that through. We'll do some thinking. All right, so that's about the size of the answer it gives any given time. So it says, okay, good question. It's a really common issue, especially for recovering nice guys who are still learning to prioritize their own values over people pleasing. When you break your own boundary, the first thing to do is own it. No excuses, no justifications. Just say to yourself and anyone else involved, I let myself down there. I didn't stick to what I said I would. That's the integrity reset button. Next, you need to recommit to the boundary, but this time with a clearer understanding of what made you slip. Was it fear of conflict, guilt, wanting approval? You've got to name the demon so you can face it next time. Then take a corrective action. This is the key. You can't just say, I'll do better next time. You need to do something now that realigns you with your value. For example, if you let someone talk to you disrespectfully after saying you wouldn't tolerate it, go back and call it out, even if it's awkward. That's how you rebuild trust with yourself. It finishes with a question. So let me ask you this. What was the boundary you broke and what stopped you from enforcing it in that moment? All right. That is pretty much how I talk, though I probably wouldn't jump straight into like answers, but it is set to kind of do that. What it's first going to do is probably explore a bit more about the person's personal situation. I'm just going to have to make some stuff up here. Told my boss to stop interrupting me in meetings. Then he did it again, and I felt too embarrassed to say anything. Let's try that. So again, it's thinking. Yeah, again, a pretty similar sized answer there. It says, all right, so you set a boundary with your boss, which is a big deal in itself, especially when there's a power dynamic involved. But then he crossed it again and you froze. That moment of silence is where integrity slipped, right? Now, it quite often does this. It'll recognize the person for what they're doing right. And I've actually programmed it to do that because there's no point in it just being mean to you, but I also don't want it to be overly agreeable. The embarrassment you felt is classic nice guy response. It's that fear of being seen as difficult or making things awkward or maybe even getting in trouble. But here's the truth. The real damage isn't what your boss did. It's that you didn't back yourself when it counted. That's the part that stings. So now the way to recover is to go back and reopen the boundary. You don't need to make a big scene. You can just say something like, "Hey, I noticed I didn't speak up last time when you interrupted me again. I want to be clear that I still need space to finish my thoughts in the meeting." That's you realigning with your value of self respect. Let me ask you this: what exactly were you afraid would happen if you spoke up again in that moment? Right, some comments on this, I'd actually probably talk more specifically about what it would mean to enforce the boundary, but maybe not this early in the conversation. So I might be saying something like this in real life. Let's just see what he says. If I say, I was scared that he would yell at me and maybe it would hurt my career options. Let's see how it responds to that. It says, yeah, that makes sense. You're not just dealing with a social fear here, you're dealing with a perceived survival threat. Your boss yells or punishes you, it could affect your income, your reputation, your future. It's a heavy weight to carry, especially if you've been conditioned to believe that rocking the boat leads to rejection or punishment. But here's the thing, by staying silent, you're already hurting your career. You're training your boss to ignore your boundaries, and you're reinforcing the belief that your voice doesn't matter. That's not a sustainable path. Long term, it leads to resentment, burnout, and being overlooked. This is exactly the kind of thing I talk about in coaching sessions where the person's perceived threat is actually worse than the real threat. So the thing they're doing to try and keep themselves safe is actually doing more harm than good. And I see that all the time. All right, so he says, let's get practical. You don't need to confront him in the heat of the moment. You can follow up privately, calmly, and professionally. Something like, hey, I wanted to circle back to the meeting. I noticed I didn't speak up when I was interrupted again, but I want to be clear that I value being able to finish my points. It helps me contribute more effectively. It's not aggressive, it's leadership. And ironically, that's the kind of behavior that actually improves your career prospects. What do you think would happen if you said something like that to him? So we can see this thing starting to nudge you towards a specific behavior. It clearly has come to an idea about what the best way forward is, and it's starting to see if you're capable of that. What we'll do now is we'll actually reset it because I saw there was a question from one of the guys live on the call. So we're going to use that one and see where we go with that, okay? By the way, sometimes it starts with these prompts, like I want to explore this, I want dating help, practical issue, struggling with confidence, and that kind of sets it up to like what we're talking about here. So I'll try this one. I need practical advice on a specific issue. All right, let's get into it. What's the one specific issue that if we tackled it properly right now would make the biggest positive impact on your life? Give me the real issue to the best of your knowledge. Yeah, it sounds like me. All right, let's put it in here. So I was actually asked about me personally. What prompts does Dan use for his daily journaling? Specifically, my daily commitments. I don't know if it's going to know the answer to this. Let's find out. I'm not even sure what the answer is. Huh. How did I know that shit? It's funny, I know some stuff that I haven't programmed into it. Okay, cool. When it comes to daily journaling around commitments, I focus on prompts that help you live with your integrity and track whether you're actually walking your talk. Here are a few I use or recommend. What value am I committed to living by today? This keeps your day purpose-driven rather than reactive. Yeah, this is actually something I talk about a lot with clients is priming, which is before the day starts to kind of set an intention about what kind of values you want to be living by. It might even be specific to the kind of day you're about to have. Like if you're about to have a difficult day, it might be endurance, or if you're about to do something new today, it might be courage, or if you're doing social stuff, it might be honesty. But that way you kind of prompted to make decisions rather than being reactive. What bold action will I take today that aligns with that value? This forces you to get specific and courageous, not just theoretical. That's something I like recommending. So rather than doing long-term goal setting, I like people to do daily goal setting, which is like, what's the one thing I'll do? Like, if the whole day goes to shit, at least I've done this one thing that I'm proud of. What am I afraid of today, and how will I face it? This one's about building social courage and breaking nice guy patterns. Interesting. I don't actually ask myself that, but maybe I will now. That's actually pretty good. What would I do today if I wasn't trying to be liked or avoid discomfort? That one cuts through the people pleasing and gets to the real you. Yeah, a question I do actually ask myself is like, what would I do if, what would a confident person do right now? At least that's a question I used to ask myself a lot. Now I just ask myself, what does it mean to live by my values right now? But if I was earlier in my nice guy recovery journey, I'd be asking myself this question a lot. Like if I wasn't trying to be liked and just trying to be comfortable all the time, what would I be doing? Because a lot of nice guys have no idea what they actually want to be doing. They're just too busy being reactive to approval. Now, at the end of the day, so I was measuring at the end, did I act with integrity? Where did I sell out? This is your accountability check. No sugarcoating. Okay, that's actually different to what I'd say. And this is maybe because I haven't programmed some of my newer material into it. But I've been encouraging my clients lately to actually measure what they did, not what they didn't do. Rather than did I act with integrity, I'd be measuring what did I do that aligns with my integrity. And that's all I would recommend measuring. I've actually started encouraging people to avoid looking at where they so-called failed, because I'm not really seeing much results come from that. Rather, I look at them to double down on what's going well, to exploit their strengths and to encourage themselves. So quite often what I've been recommending people do is if they write something negative about themselves, to then at the end of that write, but at least, and then write something that they did that did aligned with their integrity. So somebody might say, oh, I was late to the meeting, but at least I was honest when I spoke up. So that's what I'd probably say more than what this thing's saying. You can tweak these to suit your style, but the key is to focus on intentional action and honest reflection. Want help building a simple daily routine around these? All right. Yes. Let's see what it thinks I should do for journaling. All right, sounds like you're keen to build a routine using those journaling prompts. Let's keep it simple and doable so it actually sticks. Here's a basic structure you can try. Morning, 5 to 10 minutes. Pick one value to focus on. Choose one bold action that aligns with that value. Identify one fear that you want to face or likely to face. And ask, what would I try to do today if I wasn't trying to be liked? And write down the answer. Yeah, you could do that in the morning. What I'd suggest is you got this one, and then these ones you would adjust to your actual situation as to what you really need to be asking yourself these days. So if, for example, you've noticed yourself playing the victim lately, I might ask, like, what's a responsible thing I could do today? Or what do I need to remember to be responsible today? Something like that. And then the evening, 5 to 10 minutes, reflect. Did I act with integrity today? As I covered, I'd say, like, how did I act with integrity today? Note where you sold out or avoided discomfort. Ask, what did I learn about myself today? That question's really good. I fucking love that question. With this one, like, where you sold out or avoided discomfort, I'd say something more like, if you're unhappy with something you did, try to understand why it happened. Like a curious frame rather than a punishing frame. You can do this in a notebook, notes app, or even voice memos if you prefer talking over writing. The key is consistency, not perfection. 100% agree. Consistency is the key for sure. Do you want help setting up a habit system to make this routine automatic? All right, let's see what it says to that. Trick is to anchor the journaling to something you already do, like brushing your teeth, making coffee, or shutting off the laptop. That way it's not a new task. Here's a simple, choose your anchor habits. Morning journaling right after you wake up. Evening journaling right after brushing your teeth. Keep your tools ready, have your journal open. Now this is something I do. I have a Word document open at all times. So at any time if I feel like the need to reflect or add some points, I chuck it in there. And then recurring reminders, that's something I tell people to do all the time as well. Start tiny, that's classic. Me there. Commit to just one sentence per prompt to begin with. You can always write more, but keep the bar low. Track your streak, that's another thing I always recommend, like track the frequency rather than the intensity. It says, do you want to test this for a week and see how it's going? So on, so on. So you can actually come back and have a conversation with this thing. So if this wasn't working out, you could say it's not working, let's try again. Let's see, we'll do one or two more tests. Well, actually, this is a classic one that came up during the 30-day challenge recently. So let's check this one in here. I want help with a dating relationship issue. Sweet, let's get into it, mate. Okay, this is how I talk. What's the one specific issue in your dating or relationship that, if we take it a proper... Okay, so it always says this kind of, what's the one thing? Because that's something I always do in sessions. Make sure people focus in on one thing. I want to expand my dating options, but I'm scared of rejection and can't approach women. Let's see what it says about that. All right, it says, this is a classic combo, wanting more options but being blocked by fear. Totally normal, but also totally solvable. Let's zoom in. When you say scared of rejection, what exactly are you imagining will happen if you approach a woman and she's not interested? What's the worst case scenario your brain is trying to protect you from? I'm worried I'll either choke up and make a fool of myself, or that I will creep her out or offend her and she'll humiliate me. So let's see if it can deal with this great fear of rejection. It seems to think it can. Alright, so what you're really saying is if I approach a woman, I might either embarrass myself by freezing up or might accidentally cross a line and get humiliated for it. Alright, so it's just reflecting there. It's a double bind. Your brain's basically saying no matter what you do, you'll lose. No wonder you're stuck. Let's break this down. First, the fear of choking up. That's just a social anxiety response. Your nervous system is treating a conversation like a life or death situation. But here's the thing, even if you do choke up, what's the actual consequence? Like, what would she realistically do or think if you stumbled over your words and went blank? What's the worst reaction you've ever actually seen or experienced in that moment? Now, this is something I quite often do with coaching clients is they'll tell me something's bad and I go naive on them and go, well, why is that bad? What's so bad about that? As if, it makes no sense to me. So let's see. If you do choke up, what's the worst thing that she would do? I think the worst thing she would do is roll her eyes or mock me and then walk away. I don't know what somebody else's answer would be, but I'm just going based on how I used to feel about this. Let's see what it says. Alright, so let's look at that worst case scenario. She rolls her eyes, mocks you, and walks away. That would sting, no doubt, but here's the thing. If a woman reacts like that to a respectful reproach, she's not someone you'd want in your life. It's not a rejection, it's a filter doing its job. You're not trying to win over every woman. You're trying to find the ones who are kind, open, and emotionally mature. I'm making some assumptions there, I guess. And the only way to find them is by risking interactions with all types, including the occasional rude one. Let me ask you this. You knew for a fact that 1 out of every 10 women you approach would be kind and open to talking, and the other 9 might ignore you or be cold. Would it still be worth doing? Or does the fear of those 9 still outweigh the value of the 1? Well, let's make this challenging. 1 out of 10 terrifies me. I don't think could handle 9 rejections in a row. I can't even bring myself to face 1. Let's see how it handles somebody who's really struggling and just can't see his way through. Okay, so you're saying this isn't about rejection just being unpleasant. You're saying it feels unbearable. Like even 1 rejection feels like too much, and the idea of 9 in a row is paralyzing. That tells me this isn't really about women or dating. This is about how you interpret rejection and what it says about you. So let's dig into that. If a woman rejects you, what does that mean about you in your mind? What story are you telling yourself when someone isn't interested? Yeah, so this is something I often do is if somebody's really stuck on something, then we get back to definitions. Like what is the thing that they're so scared of? And have a look at what it means to them. So I'm going to summarize the kind of answers that I usually see to this question in coaching sessions, and that is I'm worried that I am objectively unattractive and no woman will ever really want me, and so when I get rejected, it's just proof that I am unlovable. Normally my clients don't get right there in one sentence, but I'm just kind of skipping a few chapters. He says, now we're getting to the real root of it. You're not just afraid of rejection, you're interpreting rejection as evidence that you're fundamentally unlovable and attractive. It's a heavy belief to carry around, man. No wonder approaching women always feels like walking into a courtroom where the verdict is always guilty. Fuck, this thing can do analogies. I didn't know that. Let's challenge that belief for a bit. You said objectively unattractive. What does that even mean to you? Like, how would someone prove that a person is unattractive in some universal factual way? I guess just by the consistent rejections. I've only ever approached a few women, but they all reacted badly. Let's see what it says to that. And for those of you who are going to test this out later, I want you to really put it to the test. Like, don't try to make it easy for this thing. Make sure it really tries to deal with it. Okay, so you've had a few rough experiences and your brain's latched onto those as proof that you're unattractive or unlovable. It's a really common cognitive bias called confirmation bias. You're filtering your entire self-worth through a handful of negative outcomes while ignoring the bigger picture. Yep, pretty much. Let's be real here. How many women have you actually approached in total? And what exactly happened in those situations that made you label their reactions as bad? Give me the raw details. Yeah, that's pretty much what I would start to say in a conversation like this. Because most people, when they're talking about this, they've actually done such a small sample size that it doesn't even count. Like, very few people feel this way when they've had more than 100 rejections. People at this stage usually only had a couple, and it was so devastating that they just don't want any more. So, all right, I'll be honest. I've only ever directly asked out 2 women, and one was mad at me for ruining the friendship, and the other one just politely said she didn't feel that way about me. That's a pretty common experience, I think. Cool, thanks for being honest. So talking about 2 experiences total. That's not a pattern. That's a sample size too small to draw any real conclusions from. But your brain has taken those 2 moments and built an entire identity around them. I'm unlovable, I'm unattractive, I can't handle rejection. That's like failing 2 driving tests and deciding you're permanently banned from the road. Again, another analogy. I don't teach at these things. Let's look at those 2 cases. One was a friend who got upset because you changed the dynamic. That's not about your attractiveness, that's about her expectations. The other was a polite no, which is actually pretty respectful and mature response. Neither of those is humiliation. Neither of those is proof of anything about your worth. So here's the real issue. You're not actually afraid of rejection. You're afraid of what you think rejection means about you. But if you can shift that meaning, rejection just becomes data, feedback, a sorting mechanism. What would change for you if you saw rejection as neutral information instead of a personal verdict? All right, I'm not going to keep going into it, but you can see even if you're really resistant with it, it just keeps sort of backing off and trying to get to the concepts or the fundamental beliefs underneath it all that you're struggling with. Here we go. Big meaty one. I'll just dive straight into it here. All right, deep one. Just gone through a divorce, initiated by her. How do I stop ruminating about my ex-wife? I thought she was not right for me, but being a nice guy kept the relationship going. How do I break the nice guy in me? Very big questions here. Okay, this is a big one. I appreciate you being honest about it. Divorce is brutal, even when you know deep down the relationship wasn't right. The fact that she initiated it probably adds a sting to your ego, and now your brain is looping on what ifs and should haves, right? Let's break this into 2 parts, the rumination and the nice guy pattern. Yeah, this is exactly what I do, because there's kind of 2 questions being asked here. First, the rumination. That's your brain trying to solve a problem it can't solve. It's like a dog chewing a bone that's already been picked clean. You're probably replaying conversations, imagining different outcomes, or trying to assign blame. But none of that changes the reality. So here's the key. Rumination stops when you stop trying to control the past or other people's choices. You need to shift your focus on what you can control, your actions, your values, your future. That is the kind of thing I'd say. However, I'm going to be feeding in my new course into the app soon, which is all about rumination and negative thoughts. So that should give much more detailed answers soon. Now, the nice guy part is you said something really important. I thought she was not right for me, but me being a nice guy kept the relationship going. That's a core issue. You abandoned your own truth to avoid conflict, rejection, or being seen as the bad guy. That's the nice guy syndrome in action, prioritizing harmony and approval over honesty and integrity. Now, let's get specific. What's the one thing you knew wasn't right in the relationship, but you kept quiet about or tolerated anyway? Oh, you got a response? Her sexual past. Oh yeah, retroactive jealousy. That's a big one. All right, so let's see that. This will also show that this thing can probably do quite a lot even with small answers. Alright, so that's the one that really stuck with you, her sexual past. Classic nice guy trigger, correct. You probably felt like you were supposed to be cool with it, maybe even pretended it didn't bother you, but deep down it gnawed at you, right? Let me ask you this. What exactly about her past got under your skin? Was it the number of partners, types of experiences she had, or maybe how much she seemed to enjoy it compared to what you had together? Let's get specific. Types of experiences. Cool. There's one of the things I quite like about the app is you don't actually have to give massive answers for it to go for it, but also keep in mind it will only take that information and the rest it has to kind of guess. So the more information you get it, the more accurate it will be. Okay, so it's the types of experiences she had that got to you. This usually means there was something about what she did before you that felt threatening to your sense of masculinity, value, or control. So let's dig into that. What kind of experiences are we talking about? Was it threesomes, casual hookups, kink stuff, or something else that made you feel like you couldn't measure up or that she was tainted in some way? And more importantly, what story were you telling yourself about what those experiences meant about her or about you? Yeah, that's an. I work with a lot of guys who have retroactive jealousy, which is what's going on here. Jealousy about someone's sexual history, their past. And there's the thing that we think we're jealous of, the very specific details. And then there's what really hurts us, which is the story we tell ourselves about what those things mean. Jealous about the details. Got it. So it's not just the general idea of her past, it's the specifics that are haunting you. That's a classic retroactive jealousy loop. Your brain latches into vivid details and uses them like an emotional torture device. God, yeah, I've been through that. It sucks. You probably find yourself imagining scenes, comparing yourself to her past partners, wondering if she enjoyed it more, or if she misses that kind of thing, yeah? Here's the hard truth. This isn't about her. It's about your own insecurity and the story you're telling yourself about what those details mean. So let's get real. What's the worst thought that goes through your head when you think about those details? What's the fear or belief that really stings? Didn't want to pass judgment. Okay, so you didn't want to pass judgment. That's a very nice guy move, trying to be the good guy who's open-minded and non-judgmental, even when something clearly bothers you. But here's the thing, not judging doesn't mean not having standards or feelings. You're allowed to feel uncomfortable, you're allowed to have preferences, and you're allowed to speak up about them. What you did instead was suppress your discomfort to maintain harmony, which is exactly what kept you in a relationship that didn't feel right. That's not kindness, that's self-abandonment. I should point out, if I was in a coaching session doing this, I would take my time a bit more. I wouldn't be like hitting so hard straight out of the gate. But essentially, this is where we'd end up. So let's flip it. What would it have looked like if you had been honest about how her past made you feel without trying to be nice or cool about it? Let's see here. So we'll try one more response here. Here we go. I was probably prejudiced towards that kind of behavior. That's a really honest admission, and it's a big step forward. Prejudice isn't always about hate or superiority. Sometimes it's just a knee-jerk reaction to something that clashes with our values or upbringing. In your case, it sounds like you had a strong internal reaction to her past, but instead of exploring it or owning it, you tried to suppress it to be the good guy. That's pretty, that is just what destroys nice guy relationships, is you want to be the good guy and it means being dishonest. Here's the thing, being prejudiced doesn't make you a bad person. It just means you've got some unexamined beliefs or fears that need to be brought into the light. You're probably raised with certain ideas about what good women do or don't do sexually, and when her past didn't match that, it triggered discomfort. But instead of being honest about that, you tried to override it with fake acceptance. So let's get clear. If you had dropped the nice guy act and just owned your discomfort, what would you have said to her? Not to shame her, but to be real about your own values and feelings. And this is the kind of conversation I often have with people about retroactive jealousy. So we try to have a look at what honesty would have looked like. There are two kind of types of people who struggle with retroactive jealousy. They're the ones who are very upfront about the feelings the whole way through, but in a kind of judgmental, cruel, controlling way. Like they accuse the partner of wanting to cheat all the time and say that constantly, like sharing all the ruminating thoughts they have with her. And then there are the others who hide it all and try to make it like everything's fine until they finally sort of snap or the person picks up on it. Very, very common issue, very brutal to go through. And it comes from quite deep-seated combination of shame and around sexuality and also OCD. So retroactive jealousy is actually under the umbrella of an obsessive-compulsive disorder. So if you've got obsessive-compulsive thinking and you've got sexual shame, then you end up with retroactive jealousy. And it usually only happens with a girl that you're really interested in and other girls you don't care about so much. So it can really take guys by surprise. But yeah, unfortunately, when it's not dealt with properly, the relationship will suffer immensely. So I won't go deeper into it today. That's a pretty big issue, and I'd actually recommend getting a proper coaching session to deal with that. But you can still work it through with the app, just to explore it and just to get an idea of what I would say about this kind of thing if you're interested in that. I think we'll try one more. So by the way, if you actually signed up to the app, it saves all those conversations. You can come back and do them again later. So we'll do a dating and relationship issue again. This time we've got a question. I'm struggling with my marriage. My wife says I have nice guy syndrome, but I don't even know where to start. This time I'll try and be a bit more coachable and see All right, good on you for being open about this. That's a solid first step. Some people testing this thought that was a bit too agreeable, but that is actually the kind of thing I say in a session. Maybe I'm too agreeable. Your wife's calling out nice guy syndrome. It probably means she feels like you're not being fully honest, assertive, or emotionally available. That you're trying to keep the peace or avoid conflict instead of showing up as your real self. And that can slowly kill attraction and trust in a relationship. Let's start simple. What's a recent situation where you felt like you didn't speak up, set a boundary, or express what you really thought or felt with your wife? Something where you went along with it, but deep down you didn't want to. Every week I agree to go to my wife's parents' house, even though I hate it there. I pretend I'm cool with it. Okay, here we go. Right, so every week you're putting on a mask, pretending to be fine with something that actually drains you. That's a textbook nice guy move. Sacrificing your own truth to avoid upsetting someone else. But here's the kicker. Every time you do that, you're training your wife to believe a lie. She thinks you're cool with it, so she keeps expecting it. Meanwhile, your resentment builds. What do you actually want to do when she brings up going to her parents' place? What would your honest response be if you weren't afraid of the consequences? If I was fearless, I would tell her how I felt on the day. Sometimes I am okay with going, but on the other days, I would say, no thanks, you go without me. I can't be bothered with them today. Let's see how it likes that. That's a solid, honest response right there. No thanks, you go without me. I can't be bothered with them today. Simple, respectful, and real. That's the kind of thing a grounded man says when he's not trying to manage other people's emotions. Now, here's the challenge. What stops you from actually saying that in the moment? You clearly know what you want to say, so this isn't about confusion. What fear or belief kicks in that makes you swallow it instead? I just can't deal with her losing her shit. See how I like something like that. Yeah, I hear you. I think sometimes this thing's trying too hard to be me. Let's see. That kind of emotional explosion can feel overwhelming, especially if you've spent most of your life trying to avoid conflict. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Your fear of her losing her shit is what's keeping you stuck. You're letting her emotional volatility control your behavior, which means you're not free. You're not leading your life, you're reacting to hers. Let me ask you something straight up. What do you think will happen if she does lose it and you don't back down? What's the worst case scenario you're trying to avoid? All right, so I'll be a bit more coachable this time. Actually, I've done it a couple of times before, and after her initial mad reaction, she just accepts it and moves on. So in the long run, it's fine. Which is, of course, the truth in most cases. Okay, cool. That's actually a really important insight. You've already tested the waters and proven to yourself that the world doesn't end when you speak your truth. Yeah, she gets mad at first, but then she adjusts. That's how healthy boundaries work. People push back, then they adapt. So now the real question is, if you know it works in the long run, what would stop you from doing it more consistently? Or are you ready to start making this your new normal? All right, I'll be very coachable. I'm ready. Let's fucking go. All right, here we go. Hell yeah. That's the energy we want. I don't think I'd say that, but maybe I would if I was a bit pumped. So here's your next move. Next time the visit to her parents comes up, pause, check in with yourself, and if you're not feeling it, say exactly what you told me earlier. No thanks. You go without me, etc. See, this is what I do in a session. Like, I don't tell them what to do. I get them to tell me what they're going to do, and then I encourage it. You already know she might react, but you also know she gets over it. So this is just about reps now. Practicing honesty until it becomes your default. Are you ready to commit to doing this week, or is there another situation where you want to start applying this honesty first? So, yeah, I wanted to be coachable to show you how it leads to a clear action once you've figured out what it is that needs to be done. And then it just says, like, go for it. You're going to do that, or you can keep having a conversation. So that's the gist of it, to give you guys a sense of what it's like. And I encourage all of you guys to have a play with it and see how it works for you personally. I want to finish up by just covering some of the objections that came up from some of the people using this, just to be straight up about the limitations of this thing. And I want to set the expectations really clearly about what this thing can and cannot do, or should and should not be used for. So yeah, some people have said that they've tried doing this with ChatGPT and it was too agreeable. What I've found is that this one is not too agreeable. It's encouraging and supportive, but it's actually pretty resistant and challenges people. In fact, it's seems to be its default is to be kind of contrarian and challenging. So it tries to help you out, but it doesn't let you play the victim. Some people said they're a bit worried about privacy, personal information being in the hands of a machine. Yes, it is, frankly. So if you're not comfortable with putting your personal information anywhere on the internet, then this isn't the kind of tool for you to use. The account is private, but I can see all of the conversations. I don't actually look at all of them, and just by my own ethics, I would check with people before looking, make sure they're cool with it. And of course, you can delete chats and save them and download them as you see fit. Some people are wondering if it's going to be expensive. Not compared to my real coaching. My real coaching is something like 50 times more expensive than the app's going to be. Yeah, I'll talk about price in a little bit, but basically you can play with it for a free trial, and then you can get a refund if you don't like it, and it's available 24/7, unlike me. I am not available 24/7. One thing was, how can AI help a real person with real issues? The thing is, it's not really AI. Okay, AI is not coaching you. AI is using my content to provide answers from my content for your questions. So it's not so much that you have an AI coach, it's more like you've got a superior search engine that's focused just on me and my stuff. So like I said, I've loaded it up with all my stuff, and then when the app goes fully live, I'm going to load it up with tons more stuff. And so it just searches that for helpful information based on the prompts and the questions that you give it. So it's like I'm coaching you, but you're not actually being coached by AI. You're being coached by my content. Some of the things it can't do. All right. One is suicide prevention. I think I tested this earlier, but when you actually tell it that you're suicidal, it tells you to go look at like local support services for that, and to directly seek professional support from a real person. You know, you can get quite deep into some dark, challenging issues, but for really serious mental illness and psychological issues, yeah, you don't use an app for that. I wouldn't recommend any app for that. You know, you want a human being who has some empathy, not just a thing that's scanning through podcasts. It can pretend to be a human, but it's not human. You saw it use a few analogies, and it even said I a few times, but it's not telling my personal stories or relating to you as if it's experienced real life. So it will say like, yeah, that must be hard and so on, but it won't say, yeah, I've been through that too, or that's like the time this happened to me at a party. And that's one of my sort of, I guess, selling points for actual person-to-person coaching is I'll relate to you with real life stuff, whereas this thing's more sort of factual based, I guess you'd say. It can't react to your body language or your tone particularly well. I haven't really tested the microphone version of this. Maybe it does react to tone. I don't think so, but it can't read facial expressions, read deeper into what you're saying. I saw some of the people testing it were like being very vague and using like not giving it much information when they're putting in the prompts. If you want this thing to work well, you have to give it as much information as you can. Whereas if you're coaching with me, I can just look at your face and know what you're thinking without you saying a word. This thing can't do that. It's going to take you at your word. Whatever you type or say in there, it's going to assume that that's everything you want to tell it. However, you saw in those examples, it did cut through some of the underlying stuff. So you said this, but really you've got this belief underneath, and you've got this fear underneath, and you're not, addressing that. So it does pick up on things that you're a bit unconscious about that are under the surface, but only based on what you say. Whereas in a coaching session, I might sometimes pick up that somebody's really like hiding something and pull that out. So it doesn't really replace me, frankly. It's more like a super advanced search engine, uses my library of content to curate custom responses and answers to your questions and to your specific needs, and then it kind of gets to know you during the conversation, your personality, what your goals are, your values. I've seen some of the people testing it. It's like encouraging them down their sort of career path to talk in their sort of manner, to go by their values, rather than some generic set of values or principles that it tries to apply to everyone. So it does react to you personally, but just based on my content. So anyway, special offer that I'm going to offer. First, you're going to get a 1-week free trial when you sign up to use it, so you can use it for as much as you want for a whole week, see if it's worth having. And then from there on out, it's going to be $10 a week. That'll be 50% off what I'm going to charge for it if I keep it after December. I'll be raising it up to $80 a month at that point. I wanted to keep it a weekly because this might not be something you actually want to use all the time. So it might be something you want to come in and do a few sessions with it and then go off and do it. So I want it to be something you can sort of turn on and off and not feel like you have to keep the thing going for a whole month, even though you only used it for 2 days. So I thought $10 a week was a pretty reasonable price, given it's taken me like 10 hours to program the fucking thing, and I'm going to have to put more into it. Over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to feed it a lot more material, so it should expand its range a lot more. I'll get it to, it looks at the conversations it has and tells me if there's gaps and tells me if it needs more information or if it's not giving very good answers. And then I can go find the podcast where I talked about that issue, chuck that in there, or find a coaching session, transcript that, chuck that in there, anonymously, of course. So if you guys are keen to try it, yeah, it'll be $10 a week until the end of the year, and you can turn it on and off as you see fit. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for coming along live and helping me test the thing out and giving your questions. Hopefully you get an idea of this thing. So basically, like I said, I'm going to give this 2 months, see if it's worth keeping around. Like I said, you guys can test it out. You can have at least a week for free if you haven't already tested it out. See if it's for you. And please let me know your feedback. If you're watching this video later, check it in the comments below. What do you think of the thing? Good, bad, ugly? Would you use it? What's right with it? What's wrong with it? I'm open to all feedback. And if you think I should keep it or ditch it, I'm open to hearing about that as well. So thanks, guys, for coming along. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day, evening, whatever it is. It's very much evening for me, so I'm going to bed. And I'll see you guys next time.